In chapter 16, we see that what goes up must come down. Baasha ascended to the throne violently and unexpectedly and ruthlessly. He wiped out the entire family line of Jeroboam, and here we find that he will meet his own violent, vicious end. As well as the downfall of Baasha, we see the descent of this northern kingdom of Israel into just total chaos and confusion. You'll see it just from the subheadings here, the number of people who claim the throne up north in Israel, and just how briefly they retained the throne for, until eventually, at the end of the chapter, a man whose name is perhaps more familiar than most kings, King Ahab, takes the throne in Israel. So Baasha dies, his son succeeds him on the throne. Could this be the start of a long line of kings from the same family? The answer is a dramatic, definitive no. He reigned in Tirzah just 2 years. Zimri, one of his officials with command of half his chariots, plotted against him. So Zimri, he's a military man. He knows that this throne was captured through the murder of Jeroboam's family, and that idea then has lodged in his heart as well. Well, he could seize the throne for himself, couldn't he, legitimately? This king is a drunkard, and it hampers his ability to watch out for his own safety. Quick as a flash, verse 10, Zimri came in, struck him down, and killed him in the 27th year of Asa, king of Judah. Then he succeeded him as king. So I wonder how long this king, Zimri, will reign for. Well, look at verse 15. Zimri reigned in Tirzah for 7 days. That is an abysmal reign, isn't it? We now learn that the rest of the Israelite army, so remember, Zimri ruled over half of the chariots, they were encamped near Gibbethon, a Philistine town. Zimri, who was one of the chief commanders of the army, obviously he's not with them because he's off assassinating the king. So when the Israelites in the camp heard that Zimri had plotted against the king and murdered him, they proclaimed Omri, the commander of the army, king over Israel, that very day there in the camp. So they've got a great military hero of their own, and he hasn't abandoned them for his own selfish pursuits. He's encamped with them, besieging this Philistine town, and they say, well, we don't want Zimri as our king. We want Omri, our hero, to be our king. And what's Zimri going to do to stop us, given that the whole army is down here and we are united in our opposition to him? And they're right about that, aren't they? So they turn and march against Zimri, this new king. Zimri realizes straight away that the writing is on the wall, so to speak. And so we read, he went into the citadel of the royal palace and set the palace on fire around him. So the military men want Omri to be their king. But we soon find out that the people of Israel, not the military of Israel, the people were split into 2 factions. Half supported Tibni, son of Ginath, for king, and the other half supported Omri. Well, you can probably guess who's going to get the throne. And so we simply read, Tibni died, I wonder how he died, and Omri became king. You get a sense of just how awful and evil this era is in Israel's history. The peaceful transfer of power is something that people in our country tend to take for granted. But it really is something that we ought to give thanks to God for. There is absolute chaos here continually because they all know the person on the throne has no more right to rule than they do. Why? Because they are not there under God's authority. They are there on their own. The only person with any real authority is the king who comes from the line of David. At the moment, in the south, it is King Asa of Judah. And so Omri, the commander of the army, takes the throne. Eventually, he dies and passes the throne to his son, Ahab, son of Omri, and he became king of Israel. Listen to this terrifying introduction in verse 30. Ahab, son of Omri, did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of those before him. We've seen some pretty evil people come before him, but here we see that Ahab outstrips them all. You might remember that Jeroboam introduced a kind of compromised and corrupted religious system up north. For those who lived in those top 10 tribes, he wove together the truth with lies, didn't he? Well, Ahab, it seems, has no patience with the truth at all. He dismisses it altogether. He removes it and replaces it with the worship of these false gods. From now until the end of the book, we will be essentially watching the reign and the rebellion of King Ahab. And so we'll have much more to say about this man over the coming chapters. For today, though, just see the chaos and the destruction that is brought about when we reject the instruction and the authority of God. If God is not our authority, then we will all become our own kings. And do you see that is exactly what happened in this chapter? And do you see that that is what happens in our own world as well? If God does not have ultimate authority, if you try and remove the objective reality of God, well, you are simply left with the subjective chaos of all kinds of competing opinions and ideas and authorities. And while some people might cheer about that in the name of our own ability to decide what is good and evil, right and wrong, true and false, wise and foolish, we might cheer about our own ability to decide our future. We might cheer about that in the name of freedom, but the reality is that it's foolish. If we reject the way and the truth, we also reject life. And we are left with a world that has descended into desperation and spiritual death.